Bruno, Emerson, Stella, Mayra, Maria, Saulo, Viviane, Yasmin, Rafael, many people. I can't say hello to everyone on a one-to-one basis. There are many people here and more joining us, Glauco, but it's a pleasure having you all.
Such a
Welcome.
pleasure.
Graciela is saying that she's saying hello from Monterrey in Mexico. Isn't
That's
that
so
great?
exciting.
Hello from Avaré, São Paulo with Adriana. All right, so welcome everyone. Hello, Glauco.
Hi, hello. It's great to be here.
I think first of all, let's introduce ourselves, right? So I'm Wilson, but everyone calls me Will. I'm one of the academic coordinators at Cultura Inglesa, and I work with the learning and development team. And I'm one of the coordinators responsible for teaching qualifications offered through Faculdade de Cultura Inglesa, but I'm specifically responsible for our CELTA courses, right? So this is me, and here we have Glauco. Glauco, go ahead, say hello, introduce yourself.
Hello to everyone. I am Glauco, but everybody calls me teacher, basically.
Great.
It's such a pleasure to be here. I also work for Faculdade de Cultura Inglesa and Cultura Inglesa, the institution, as a CELTA trainer and also as a regular English language teacher.
All right. So thank you, Glauco. Well, we're here today to talk a little bit about the CELTA and the DELTA. So two very important, very renowned, I would say, teaching qualifications, but also the differences related to the online and face-to-face offers. I think this is really probably one of the main concerns. By the way, those of you who are joining us now, I see what you're posting in the chat room. So in the chat box there, if you have any more things that you want to add or comments, I'll be keeping track of it throughout as well. But we'll be having a chat here basically about the CELTA and the DELTA, what they are, the main differences, who they are for, and specifically also the differences related to online and face-to-face offers. All right, so to begin with, well, we have to consider, right, if this is CELTA or DELTA, I think before we get into the online or face-to-face thing, I'm not sure you agree, Glauco, but I think we have to look at the main differences between the two qualifications, right?
It's a great starting point.
So I think it's important to point out, I think the CELTA and DELTA, the questions that usually uh, the candidates have are related to what's the main difference between the two qualifications, or what are they exactly equivalent to? How do they relate to other qualifications in the area for our field? I think here in Brazil specifically, we often get questions related to whether we can, for example, teach at K through 12 mainstream schools. If you have one of the qualifications, if that enables you to teach. So I think covering this specifically is really important. First of all, I would point out here that, as you can see, the CELTA is an off-qual level 5 qualification, while the DELTA is an off-qual level 7 qualification. That doesn't mean much, does it, Glauco? What does that mean exactly? I think
Yes.
specifically for us, perhaps here in Brazil or in other countries, because I see we have uh, participants joining us even from Saudi Arabia or Mexico, it's not exactly the same locally, right? So for example, what you need, right, the requirements to teach in K-12, right, so kindergarten through 12th grade or mainstream schools, it depends on your location, right? Because locally, for example, in the United States, the requirements are actually, I think, dependent on the state. It might actually change from one state to the other. Of course, there are also national requirements. Here in Brazil, for example, you know that you need a licenciatura probably, right, to teach in ensino fundamental or to teach in schools. So you have to be a licensed or qualified teacher. And even the name of the qualification might change from one country to another. So you might need a teaching license, you need a teaching credential, but the CELTA and DELTA are teaching qualifications focused in English language teaching. What does the level 5 represent? Well, the British government actually regulates and accredits all of the qualifications and certificates and exams. And the body responsible for that is Ofqual. And basically, there are, I think, 8 levels. There's a level 0 as well, which is entry level. And level 8 basically relates to PhD level of study or work. So I think it's very important to understand the level of work or level of study that is required for each and every type of qualification that you undertake, right? So clearly, which one will demand more out of us? Definitely the Delta, because it's off qual level 7, and that relates to a master's degree, or for example, it sits around a master's in arts or a master's in science. It doesn't mean that it's equivalent to that. It means that that's the amount of work and the level of study that is required for you to undertake this specific course and qualification, while the CELTA is a level 5. And of course, this relates to undergraduate work, which is why you are required to be eligible for work at university, right, for an undergraduate degree in order to sign up and enroll for the CELTA. So these are the main differences, but as you see on the screen, we have some other key aspects that relate to both courses. Do you have any comments related to these, Glauco? It's definitely a
Not
golden
now.
standard, right, for the CELTA.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And mm,
They are both internationally recognized teaching
mhm,
awards, which will open doors and make teachers more eligible for teaching positions. Yes, absolutely.
mhm. And I think, yes, they're both renowned. Uh, I often hear the CELTA called the golden standard. And I think the
Hmm.
reason why, the reason for this is there are many, in fact, equivalent certificates in TESOL, right, in English language teaching.
Hmm.
They're offered by different boards, they're regulated by different boards, perhaps, or offered by different schools. But the Cambridge qualifications, they do tend to be highly renowned and recognized. And CELTA is often considered a golden standard. According to the Cambridge website, this is from there actually, 3 out of 4 English teaching jobs require the CELTA. So although it is an initial teaching qualification, and it's often considered pre-service, it can be a doorway into English language teaching, right? So even if you don't have previous teaching experience, you can undertake the CELTA and become qualified, right? With this initial qualification. But depending on your context, for example, again, here in Brazil, many teachers actually start out with very practical experience, right? So they have practical experience in teaching in the classroom, but they want to become more principled. They want to understand the rationale behind the practice and the core principles in English language teaching. And the CELTA is a good starting point for this. Meanwhile, the Delta requires this previous repertoire, right? You need to have the core concepts already in mind. You need to be comfortable with them, because the focus is to extend this repertoire and to build a more critical understanding of what you do in the classroom in terms of planning and teaching. So the Delta is usually a career development choice. So for anyone who is maybe a seasoned teacher but is looking to maybe move on to more senior roles, or coordination or teacher training, for example, it might be a good choice. So I think overall, these are the main differences when it comes to both courses and how they relate to each other. Uh, one question that came up here is if you have already considered, or actually if you already have a teaching degree, so here in Brazil, if you already have licenciatura, are both the CELTA and DELTA considerably easy to undertake? So this is a question we're getting here, Glauco. So related to the level of work, are they both relatively easy to undertake? We're going to cover this throughout, but we'll get back to this. I think as we cover it, we'll have more information about this and we'll address this again at the end. All right. Uh,
Okay.
Glauco, would you like to say something here about the CELTA?
Yes, of course. So let's take a deeper and a closer look at the CELTA itself right now. The acronym stands for the Certificate in Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. And well, the acronym has changed over time, but let's focus on what it really means today. And next, we're going to take a look at who is CELTA for. So this is the beginning of the answer to the question that just popped up as Wilson read it out loud. So here are 4 important profiles of professionals and teachers who normally seek out the CELTA option. First of all, we recommend the CELTA for new teachers with no experience who are starting their career or maybe are transitioning from another career into an English language teaching and looking for the theory and the practice and a teaching award. Apart from new teachers, we also take on Delta teachers with some experience who want to develop their skills even further and also begin to understand the theory and the rationale behind their planning and the execution of their plans. Also, CELTA is aimed at first language English speakers and non-first language speakers. So it doesn't matter your first language, your first language background does not impede an application in any way. And then teachers who want to travel and teach English, or those who want to teach online. These days, through all the tech tools that have become even more widespread since the COVID-19 broke out, it is much easier for us to teach students who are remotely located. So these are the four main profiles of applicants that we get for CELTA and who should be looking at this particular teaching qualification, right? Wilson, any points you want to add?
Yeah, again, I think this basically covers what you might find, for example, on the Cambridge websites related to who the CELTA is for, right? This is the kind of information we see there. But again, I think it's worth looking at our local needs and requirements. Because again, depending on your profile, you might be a seasoned, very experienced teacher locally, but the CELTA, it's not necessarily just for new teachers, right? So again, if you are a teacher who, and you have experience already in the classroom and you've been teaching English, but you want to stand out, for example, right? You want to have a qualification that will beyond your experience, that will validate what you do in the classroom so that you can have better opportunities. It could be a great starting point if you have no other previous international qualification of the sort. So this is very important. And here, again, there are more details there related to the CELTA, related to the requirements. I think before we cover and go over these, just to point out that the CELTA courses, they are the same throughout. One of the questions that came up here, by the way, was related to why is the CELTA so expensive? And someone even mentioned in the chat, yes, it's charged in pounds. Well, in fact, we do have entry fees that have to be passed on to Cambridge, regardless of the center where you're taking your CELTA, and that's based in US dollars. So of course, depending on the exchange rate, it definitely impacts the total investment that you're making towards this qualification. So that's worth pointing out. But also, the CELTA, throughout the world, each and every CELTA course has to be externally moderated. And the standard of quality is the same throughout. So it is, in fact, a rather expensive, I would say, operation because of the number of tutors and candidates involved, right? The tutor to candidate ratio, the coordination involved in the background, and the arrangements that you have to make in order to get each and every course moderated and validated by Cambridge. And that needs to happen for every single course, regardless of where you take it. So again, I think this explains perhaps a little bit of why it might be expensive. And also related to the names used, right? You mentioned before, and this was something that came up here, Glauco. But CELTA, in the past, it used to be the Certificate in English Language Teaching to Adults, right? But then in 2010 or 2011, I don't remember, I think this was amended. And this is when the CELTA, right? So Cambridge amended this also to account for other contexts, including, for example, maybe teaching young learners. But it became amended and regulated again at the level 5 of qual that I mentioned before. And now it's a little broader in terms of what we cover.
One
But
of the
here's a course
questions,
overview. Glauco, go ahead.
sorry, yeah, one of the questions was again about the acronym. If this is the same as the old CELT, the CELT used to be a particular certificate. So you took the exam and was or wasn't awarded the certificate. The CELTA, on the other hand, is a much more intense course, which will take a much longer workload and there is no final exam at the end of CELTA. So I hope that helps, okay? Course overview.
Yeah, so again, it's regulated throughout, and this is the same for all courses, right, Glauco? Go ahead.
Okay, then yes. So you might like to take the CELTA in different formats. We're going to get to that in a couple of moments. However, all of them will include 120 contact hours, which means the time you spend with your colleagues and your trainers and also your own students, plus another 80 hours preparation, lesson plan, and also follow-up, which may include more chats, one-to-one chats with your trainer. You can take it full-time over the course of 4 weeks. You can take it part-time over the course of 4 months and a half. You can take it face-to-face at centers which deliver the face-to-face module, as the Faculdade de Cultura Inglesa São Paulo will be doing in January. You can also take it completely online. You teach online and you receive the input sessions from us trainers online. So this means you do not have to travel at all. You don't have any travel expenses or accommodation expenses. Or it could also be a mix of both. This is really becoming more and more flexible. The teaching practice in English is arranged by the center. So you will be required to teach lessons throughout the CELTA for real volunteer students. You will also be doing peer observation, and there's going to be feedback discussions with your group where we discuss how the delivery of the lesson went, points for improvement, and also successful areas during the execution of the plan. There is also an important element of observation of qualified teachers. You'll also be invited to attend qualified teachers to see them teaching in action, plus an element of 4 written assignments. Again, this must be completed either on the course of 4 weeks if you're taking the intensive CELTA, or over the course of 4 months and a half if you're taking the part-time CELTA. And the big question is there an examination at the end of CELTA? How does the assessment work? No, there is no big examination at the end. Assessment is continuous, so you're going to be assessed and you'll be receiving feedback as you teach, as you write your assignments, and as you collaborate professionally with other CELTEs.
All right, and here again, just one comment here about the 80 hours. Yes, the course is 120 contact hours. The 80 hours is something that you have to account for as a candidate taking the course, right? So although you might be taking a fully online course that's part-time with synchronous sessions where you're meeting your peers and the tutors live, for example, or maybe doing a face-to-face. Someone mentioned here that the full-time course in 4 weeks is very intense. Yes, I would say it's tense, intensive as well, and intense. I think lots of words there related to tension can come through. But it can be a very enriching experience as well because you're very focused, right? And this is also a key aspect, right? If you're taking a full-time course, you need to be fully available to take it, right? So
Fully
you should
available.
not be working at the same time, right? You should have some time off, or you should be focused only on the course during that time. But again, you also have to account for the fact that you need an additional 80 hours because you're planning lessons, you're writing up your lesson plans, you're working on your assignments to deliver them on time, you're following up on the feedback that you're receiving, you're going over it. And according to the syllabus, the 80 hours also accounts for record keeping because throughout the course, you have to do your record keeping, right? You have to keep records up to date. You have to keep your portfolio up to date because this is how you're assessed. So also in terms of professionalism, you have this element of keeping records and keeping everything up to date throughout. But as we mentioned before, these here are the main characteristics of the CELTA course as established by Cambridge, and they are true for each and every course because the courses
Absolutely.
are all individually assessed and moderated by Cambridge to meet compliance and quality assurance throughout the world. And the details, so for example, is it a 4-week course face-to-face? Is it a 5-week course online? Is it a part-time course throughout a semester? I think it can even be up to 1 year, in fact, although I don't think any centers offer this option. But it's
Mhm.
up to the center. So again, uh, finding the course that works best for you is really important in this sense, right? So what works according to your availability, what works according to your preferred mode of studying and learning and developing. This is really important because for Cambridge, uh, it's the center that decides the format. So it's really important as a candidate, if you sign up for the CELTA, that you know what you're getting to. So ask questions. You have to be interviewed when you sign up for the CELTA. So use that moment as well to ask questions, understand the demands of the course, the requirements. Make sure that you are fully informed before you make the decision about which type of course is best for you. In terms of what's covered, we have some more information as well.
Mhm.
Would you like to go over this, Glauco?
That's for sure. Yes, let's do that. So you will be delivering lessons to real students, and you'll also be taking part in methodology sessions so you can hone your abilities and perfect your techniques on these different areas. First of all, how to teach the productive skills, how to teach speaking lessons and writing lessons. Also, we're going to deliver methodology sessions on the receptive skills, how to plan and execute a listening and a reading lesson. Also, the teaching of grammar, vocabulary, and phonology. So, for various levels, how to address students' needs, taking into account their background as well. So, apart from the skills and the systems involved in language teaching, you'll also be in touch with up to date techniques and up to date lesson shapes so you can better cater to your students' needs and profiles. For example, how to plan a lesson based on the lesson shape we call TTT, test, teach, test, and why it can be valuable to your students. Also, the technique that is called guided discovery and how that can be implemented into grammar lessons in a way to make students more autonomous and more independent. Also, you will be gaining insights into how to use songs and videos to explore language, to present language, to practice language, and even to contextualize the whole lessons. And also, CELTA has an important element of helping you gain a better understanding of a few other teaching principles: CLIL, content and language integrated learning, which is becoming super important these days for bilingual schools, and also the elements of basic literacy, which will touch on immigrants and teaching English as a foreign language to immigrants, and also a couple of concepts in assessment, how to assess your students. So all these things are
Mhm.
part of the methodology sessions delivered by the trainers, and where you will be developing and perfecting your own techniques.
Mhm.
We'll see.
And yes, and related to this, again, there is some flexibility in the course as well. Although there is a syllabus required by Cambridge, the centers, they will usually respond to the needs of, we certainly do this at Faculdade de Cultura Inglesa, right? We do leave slots that are kind of open and flexible so that we can address the needs of the trainees in the course. So for example, depending on what comes up or what seems to be more useful for that particular group. Maybe, for example, teaching young learners or dealing with basic literacy. Again, it always depends. We do give an overview of all of it, but we can cover things in a little bit more detail as needed. So this is an important point to consider as well. Uh, and as I mentioned previously, the courses, they can be offered in a range of formats, right? But this is up to the center, in fact. And Cambridge will again check each and every course, and each and every course will be assessed and moderated at the end for compliance and quality. But the way we format and offer these courses, it's really depending according to our audience, if you will, right, to the needs of our candidates locally. So here, Faculdade de Cultura Inglesa here in São Paulo, and also now we're offering it in Rio de Janeiro, but we have different formats because these are the formats, these are the times, these are the slots that tend to work for the candidates that seek us out, right? But this can be different according to different centers. And again, it's up to the center to be sensible to the needs of the trainees specifically. So, with relation to this, after a year, right, or actually longer, about 18 months now, I think, of this pandemic era that we've been going through. Of course, this really impacted the formats of the courses. But I think it's worthwhile mentioning that prior to this, an online CELTA or a CELTA online was already offered previously. It already existed, but it was in
Hmm.
fact a blended course, right? So it was a course where you had all the input happening on a Moodle platform, right, with tasks, with recorded videos, with forum discussions conducted by the tutor. But the teaching practice up to that point, it was done face to face. This was compulsory. So although it was called CELTA Online, and this is not just Faculdade de Cultura Inglesa, I'm talking about CELTA all over the world. It was called CELTA Online, but it was actually blended because the teaching practice had to happen face to face. This was a requirement. With the pandemic, this became updated. And originally, there were extensions, right? So, okay, so now you can teach online as a component in the course. Cambridge allowed this, but it's only up through May, through June, through July. And then there were changes and changes related to this. And the centers kept getting new updates and authorization for this. But now, in fact, this has become a format in its own, right? So teaching online and offering a fully online CELTA is in fact one of the options that we have, and this is now a more permanent offer that we have by Cambridge. And by the way, there is no difference in the certificate that you get at the end of the course. I think this is a very
Hmm.
common question, right? So is the
Hmm.
certificate different? It's actually
Yeah.
not. It's the same qualification regardless of the format you're taking. Uh, but again, how do you choose which format is best for you? Again, you really have to consider, I think, what you're looking for. And as a coordinator at Cultura Inglesa, one thing that I would say is, uh, if you are, teaching online, or if you are looking for an employment opportunity, right, a teaching position with a school where, live teaching online on Zoom or Google Meet or whatever the platform is a characteristic of that school, then I think it's really worthwhile, in fact, seeking the online CELTA with online teaching practice as well, because it will prepare you more specifically for reality. In fact, in
Hmm.
my personal opinion, now this is my opinion, Glauco, do you agree that I don't think we're going back to only teaching face to face, right? I think we've opened a door and a window, in fact,
Yeah.
into this teaching online. And I think this is going to be a key feature of, I don't know, teaching in
Hmm.
general. What do you think?
Yeah. Absolutely. So you will be developing techniques as how to set up group work online, how to do your own monitoring, how to provide feedback to students on an online environment, and these skills will be definitely helpful from now on. We're not going to go back to
Hmm.
100% face-to-face teaching. Yeah.
Hmm. And in fact, we have here in the chat room one of our previous trainees, Gabriela, who said hello
Yeah.
and is sharing her experience and mentioned here
Oh.
that it was she was well, she was pretty satisfied with the Celta Online. This is the version that she did. She did this with us last year. Um, Again, it was very practical. She said there were people from all over Brazil, so I definitely think this can be one of the advantages of doing an online course, right? You get to network, I think, with people from all over as well. With face to face, this does not necessarily happen, perhaps not in Brazil, unless again you're traveling abroad to do your CELTA. And she also mentioned that it was quite challenging to plan the lessons for the teaching practice online, but it was rewarding. And I agree with this because, again, if this is the mode that you'll be working with, then it's really important that you get practice and support and guidance and feedback because this will be your reality. So,
Mhm.
with this in mind, these are the offers. This is how we're formatting the courses for the upcoming semester through Faculdade de Cultura Inglesa. right? We do have the face-to-face full-time CELTA, which is a 4-week course, very intense and intensive. But again, if you're focusing solely on the CELTA, it's one
Hmm.
way, right, to really dive into it and get things done. And it can be easier, I think, for some people to arrange their schedules around it in this way, particularly if they're not working in January. And we're offering this in São Paulo at Cultura Inglesa Higienópolis and Rio de Janeiro in the Tijuca branch. But we also have live online part-time courses happening throughout the semester. In our context, we offer this on Tuesday and Friday or Wednesday and Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. because we know that most candidates who seek us are English language teachers already in many cases. And this is when they're available to take a course in this format. So this is why we offer it in that format. But we also have the possibility of doing the self-paced part-time course. You still have to teach live on Zoom on Saturdays in this format. But the input that you do it as a self-paced activity, right? So you have forums, you have tasks, you have videos. Of course, you have support from the tutor. And in fact, although it's not required by Cambridge in this format, we do offer some live sessions because we believe it benefits the experience of our trainees participating in the course, right? So even though most of the input is asynchronous and self-paced, you do get 4 live Zoom sessions with the tutor in that format. Any comments about these formats, Glauco? Anything else that you would add?
It is. I'm just. I mean, probably repeating myself and yourself, but the course content does not
Mm.
change. Okay, you are guaranteed to have the same course content. We're going to cover the same course program. It is just 3 different ways for you to make the course fit into your own working routine. Okay.
We have someone commenting here, Jade, mentioning that she took the online course, I think, before the pandemic, but little did she know that it would be so useful just a year after. I think this did happen, right, for probably all the candidates who took the online format, because again, the CELTA online with the self-paced content already existed prior to that moment. So
Hmm.
it was a way of getting into right teaching online and maybe experiencing what it's like from a student's perspective as well before all of this happened. And the question here, which format is cheaper? Again, overall, it might always depend on different circumstances because, especially because of the exchange rate. Again, there are fees that are charged. And the self-paced part-time course, I think, has some additional fees that tend to make it a bit more expensive in our context here from our offers in Brazil, right? And then for specific information on all of this, of course, you can get in touch with CELTA at facultyinglesa.com.br, right? So this is the website. And they can give you more information about the specific costs of each format. But again, it really depends. We have this set already for next semester, but it might always change from one year to the next because it depends so much on the exchange rates and the US dollar. Okay.
Hmm.
Uh, and to sum up, then, here's a summary of the CELTA or the benefits of undertaking the CELTA. Would you like to go over them, Glauco, or any comments
All right,
about them?
then. Yeah, yeah. The summary goes like this: you'll be learning an overview of concepts, approaches, and techniques in ELT, which are considered current, up to date, and effective. You'll be putting theory to practice because you'll be teaching real students with feedback from trainers and other colleagues. So there's going to be real life teaching experience with groups of learners. They are volunteer students who will come and join us so we can deliver our lessons to them. Constant feedback and guidance as appropriate to your needs. So you may get more or less support and feedback from trainers. So depending on your level of autonomy and even the years of teaching experience you may have, you'll be working closely with other teachers, which means that you'll be networking and getting in touch with teachers from various professional backgrounds. Another added benefit is that you'll be developing professionalism in terms of coping with the coursework, meeting deadlines, and giving feedback to other CELTs in a professional manner, using professional language to do that, and also developing reflective practice. So how can I self-assess after I've taught a lesson? How can I examine my own practice to make it better and more effective? Also, there's flexibility to undertake the course in different formats, as Wilson has just pointed out, and this will fit your working routine. And you'll be receiving an internationally recognized qualification, which is a golden standard in our field. And this will qualify you to teach in your own country or even abroad.
All right. And again, the best way to find out which course is for you is basically, let me go back here, but to get in touch with the center of your choice to find out what your options are and to ask many questions. Keep in mind that whenever you enroll for a CELTA course, you have to go through a pre-interview process. You have a task to fill out. But during the interview with whoever is responsible, could be a tutor or an admin staff, use that moment to ask questions, right? So take advantage of that and ask about the requirements, ask about the formats, ask for recommendations. But again, as part of the process, you'll get lots of information, including some ideas for how you can prepare prior to the start of the course. And as someone is pointing out here, related to the language proficiency level, you need to be a C1 plus in order to enroll for the CELTA. So a C1 plus, right? So if you consider the Cambridge exams or the Cambridge language qualifications, that relates to this to the advanced certificate, right? Or what we used to call the CAE, but now the advanced,
Mhm.
the C1 advanced, but it's at a higher level, not the pass, the standard pass, but a higher C1 level. But again, you don't need to have the language qualification. This will be assessed in your application as well via the task and via the interview that you have. So you don't need to hold the CAE or the CPE.
Mhm.
This is a question here now. You don't need to be a
Mhm.
CAE holder or a CPE holder. You don't need to hold the language qualification, but you will need to ascertain this level of proficiency in your application process. And this is
Mhm.
handled by the center when you apply. All right. Okay, so moving on.
Yes, let's contrast that to the delta now, right? Shall we?
Yes. And again, just as an overview that we had in the beginning, right? We mentioned that the CELTA was an off-qual, right? So related to the boards and the regulation of the different qualifications with the government in the UK. The CELTA was a level 5. It was equivalent to undergraduate work. Now here, the Delta is level 7, which means that the level of work or the level of study and effort that you'll be putting in into getting this qualification is it's at a master's level, right? So master's in arts, master's in science, and that's the level that you'll be working at for this.
Mhm. Who is delta for? Would you like me to go on?
Go ahead, I need some water.
Yes, that's all right. So, who is Delta for? So, the profile of professionals who seek out a Delta diploma is English teachers who have been teaching for many years, and also English language teachers who want to progress into more senior roles. What do we mean by senior roles? So, a head of English or a teacher trainer. So Delta will equip you with skills, techniques, and approaches for you to move up the career ladder. Also for experienced teachers who want to extend their expertise in a specialist area. Very soon we'll be telling you what these areas might be, more academic areas or either management, will also be included. Delta is also for first language English speakers and non first language speakers who have a CFR level of high C1 or above, just like we have mentioned. So, an CAE or CPE level of command of the English language. And a very important reminder that Delta is suitable for teaching any age group, from young learners to adults, as the course program will be covering the principles of teaching regardless of the age of the students. So here are the
All
main
right.
profiles of professionals who normally seek out a Delta teaching
Mhm.
award.
And differently from what we had in the CELTA, right? The CELTA is a bit more straightforward because generally it's something that well, it is something that you do over one course, right? Although the course can be offered in different formats because we have face-to-face, uh, fully online or mixed, and we have full-time, part-time, in other maybe formats in terms of the time frame for the course. The Delta is modular, so this impacts
Hmm.
the formats and how long it might take for completion. So here are the
Hmm.
modules.
Do go on.
So here related to the modules, module one, it's essentially the exam that you take, right? So unlike the CELTA, we mentioned that for the CELTA, we have continuous assessment. You build a portfolio, and this portfolio is actually assessed. Your progress is assessed in relation to the criteria in the course. Well, here you do have an exam, right? So, in fact, it's high stakes, right? You do need to prepare for it, although technically you could sign up for it and take your exam and get one of the modules out of the way. I really highly recommend that you go through a course and that you prepare quite thoroughly. It is very challenging, isn't it, Glauco?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Uh,
The
mhm,
sorry. Not only will you have to put in, sorry, your level of commitment should be really high, and also the level of output produced, in assignments and everything must be at a deeper level.
And again, taking the course or participating in the course that will prepare you for this is really important. And it is one of the required modules. So I think one important thing to mention here is uh, in order to be a fully qualified Delta teacher, right, in order to be a Delta holder, you have to complete all three modules successfully. Because what
Hmm.
happens is you can undertake any of the modules at any time. In fact, you can take them simultaneously or in sequence. Um, but for each one, you get a different certificate from Cambridge when you complete it. But at the end of the process, once you have all three, you can request your overall certificate or your overall diploma, in fact,
Hmm.
at the OFQUAL level 7 that I mentioned. So again, it is something that you can prepare for and take in stages. Um, but you can also take it in sequence or get one thing out of the way first. It's really up to you, but also it might depend on the offers by the local centers or whatever
Hmm.
school you decide to take it in. So module one is the exam and the course that will prepare you for it. Module
Hmm.
two focuses on developing professional practice, and this is the practical component out of the three, right, Glauco? Do you have any comments about the requirements or how it works here for module two?
From myself, from the chat box.
Any comments related to this? Any information that you think is worthwhile, or the chat box as well?
Yeah, no, all right then. Yes, for module two is the one that normally takes a little longer. Some centers administer this over the course of 2 semesters, and Delties will be planning and delivering lessons and observed by the trainer with follow-up feedback session, as well as writing theoretical background assignments, on the mechanics and the rationale of teaching. So that's why it's developing your professional practice. So practical
Mhm.
teaching, observable lessons.
Mhm. And here, again, I don't want to get too deep into the details because there's quite a lot in terms of how it's assessed. But with the module two, you have some main components there related to what you do, right? You are teaching, but unlike the requirements in the CELTA, you're teaching fewer lessons, but you're working at a deeper level of understanding and critical analysis, aren't you, Glauco? I think this is the key
Hmm.
difference there. Whereas
Hmm.
in the CELTA, you are planning lessons and applying theory to practice. Here, with the module two in the Delta, in fact, you are doing some research-based work right, in order to uncover some information or principles related to teaching specific areas of language. And then through this research, you uncover information that will feed through in the lesson that you plan for a specific group of learners, and you are in essence, designing that lesson for them, accounting for the research that you've done. And it involves a great deal of reflection as well, of being very
Hmm.
critical. And alongside all of this, you have a professional development assignment that you work on to help you map out your beliefs as a teacher, the way it impacts your teaching, but also to push you to make further development and experiment with different things. And at the end, all of this is assessed, but I don't want to get into the specifics of how assessment is carried out here because it is very complex. But you're based on, right. Your assessment is based on the assignments that you turn in for the
Hmm.
LSAs, we call them, um, which includes the research, the teaching, the lesson planning, the level of reflection, how critical you are, your professional development assignment throughout the course. All of this impacts your overall result at the outcome of the CELTA, or actually of the DELTA, sorry, for Module 2. Uh, and Module 3 is very different in a way. It's one long assignment that you're doing, right? So it's a research-based assignment, but you're
Hmm.
essentially, if you're working with extending practice, you are probably selecting uh, an area and you are designing a course, right? So you do research and you design a course in a principled way, accounting for the needs of the learners and research and reading, and again, it is extensive as well, and it's one of the requirements in the whole package in order to become a Delta holder. Any other
Hmm.
comments about these three modules, Glauco, from you?
Oh, I mean, overall, from our point of view as trainers, we tend to look at the CELTA as how to teach, how to stage a lesson, how to choose your procedures and techniques. And then when we move on to Delta, we tend to ask ourselves, why am I teaching the way I am? Why am I choosing this particular staging? Why am I choosing these techniques? How is that going to impact my students? How can I respond to my students' needs even better? So it's the how for CELTA, the why for Delta. This is a starting principle, right?
Absolutely. So again, the level of depth, because it goes back to one of the questions that we have here now. But as I mentioned before, right, the delta, it sits at the off-wall level 7 description for regulation by the exam boards in the UK. So the level of study that you're conducting, it is equivalent to the level of study and effort that you would have in a master's program. But related to the question here, right? Can you teach at a university? Can you be a professor as a Delta holder? Well, it's not enough. I think in the past, at
Mhm.
some point, this used to be true, depending on the program or depending where you were specifically. But again, the requirements, just like with the CELTA, right? The requirements for teaching at a school, in mainstream schools or at university, they are decided upon by the local boards, right, and bodies. So, for example, in Brazil, if you are a teacher, you probably need to have licença tutor, right? You need to be a licensed or an accredited teacher to teach in mainstream K through 12 schools. And the same thing for university level positions as a professor, right? The local government, in a way, right, or the boards or whichever body is responsible determines what the qualifications are. However, I think even in the UK now, what you can do, in fact, is you can use your credits and
Mhm.
your work in the Delta to exempt you from the full program at a master's level so that you can get another master's degree, for example. So you might be
Absolutely.
exempt from specific components, especially related to teaching practicum, right? I think if you have that in your master's program. But it might depend, right? The positions will depend depending on where you are or the country or whatever body regulates that.
Just a couple of questions from the chat,
Mm.
Wilson. So the COTI in the past has now become ICELT, which has actually been phased out recently. ICELT is no longer being administered. So the delta is what used to be called a DOTI many years ago. I hope that helps. And to take the delta, do I need a CELTA before? You will. It's strongly recommended that you have a teaching qualification to apply for the delta, and the CELTA will open doors for the delta for sure.
Absolutely. I think the requirement there is an initial teaching qualification, right? And the CELTA is definitely the way to go. But usually, I think the recommendation that we have from Cambridge is, I don't remember whether it's 2 or 3 years from one to the next, right? Because ideally, you will do the CELTA and then you'll have a couple of years time to apply and develop. Also because there is some follow-up work at the end of the CELTA, right? You do have an assignment where you focus on your plan for continuous development after the CELTA. So I think it's important that you have time to implement what you've developed before taking on the delta. But again, it's not necessarily a requirement. It might depend. But when you get in touch with any center, so again, if you get in touch, for example, with CELTA at Faculdade Inglesa, right? So at Faculdade Cultura Inglesa, this is the email address regardless. But if you say you're interested, they can give you more information. And what happens for the Delta specifically is that we really have to look into your specifics, right? So there is a pre-task that you have to do. There is an interview. We have to go over your previous qualifications. So the center has to look into this and make sure that you have the necessary qualifications, repertoire, and experience before accepting you for the Delta. So again, the best way to find out if you can qualify to enroll for the Delta is to get in touch with a center who offers it, and they will be able to walk you through that process and check if you are suited to take on the Delta. We have some information here about the modules. Go ahead, Glauco.
Yeah, this will probably be our last slide, I suppose, because we're going to have to wrap up in a couple of minutes. So for the modules, this can be of very important interest to you. Module 1 doesn't consist of teaching, as some of you have asked before. Module 1 consists of extending your knowledge of teaching and learning English in a range of contexts, and then taking a written examination in the end, which will take you through the theory of teaching and learning. Module 2 actually focuses on teaching, on practical lessons that are going to teach, plus written assignments, and that's how you are assessed. So through the lesson observations plus the written assignments, which is putting theory into practice. And finally, for Module 3, either option you take, there is also a written assignment which must be submitted and which you must pass for you to qualify for your Delta certificate, or your diploma, by the way.
Yeah,
so
and,
that's
and
how
just based
assessment is
on
carried out.
right, just based on one of the questions that came up here, again, because the Delta is the level 7, which is equivalent to a master's degree, and I have my cat here just joining us for this talk
So
right now. Sorry.
sweet.
Yeah, I think she wants to take the Delta. Not sure.
Should be
Uh,
exempted from things.
yeah, I think she should be exempt. But I think
Mhm.
related to the course there, uh, it's very important to understand that because it's level 7 and it's equivalent to a master's degree, you need to be you need to hold previous qualifications at that level, right? So you need to have equivalent qualifications, just like for the CELTA. For the CELTA, you need to be eligible for university or undergraduate college work where you live, right? So where you reside. So this is all again taken into consideration when you enroll or when you sign up, when you apply for any of the courses, and then you get feedback on whether you're suited to enroll, in fact, according to the guidelines provided by Cambridge. But just to sum up here with the Delta then, the benefits, the Delta is modular, right? So you can work through it simultaneously or sequentially. It depends also on the offers that you find by the center, because you might not find all 3 modules offered simultaneously. And also, usually centers will, as Glauco mentioned, split module 2, perhaps over the course of 10 months or so, right? But 2 semesters, which is in fact a way of helping the candidates in the course get on with it, right? Because it can be quite a lot. It can be a bit overwhelming if you are working simultaneously, and people usually are, right? Because again, at this level, if you're taking the Delta, you probably are already a teacher, a seasoned
Mhm.
teacher with significant experience, in fact, and you're probably not taking a gap year or something, right? Particularly not in Brazil. I don't think we can afford that luxury. Um, we work throughout, and we need to be able to adapt and follow through. But it builds your critical understanding of English language teaching and deepens your understanding of the processes behind it. And I think the aim here is definitely to teach more effectively and responsively beyond the level at which you would for the CELTA, which is more related to core principles. Again, the Delta is internationally recognized, but it's highly respected. It's a benchmark of quality. So it
Absolutely.
enables you to develop your career. It can be a way for preparing for more senior positions or senior roles, or even if you want to become a teacher trainer, for example. Um, and overall, I think in both cases, both of these qualifications can be a boost to your career opportunities locally. So, for example, here in Brazil, um, although you might be a professor licenciado, right? So if you're a licensed teacher with experience, you might also have a language qualification like the CPE or the C2. But having the CELTA or holding the Delta, it can be the selling point in you, for example, to get a job with a bilingual school or as a coordinator or a supervisor or that kind of consultancy. Someone asked about this before in the chat box. So again, the Delta might be really suited to that sort of work where you're working directly with teachers, maybe supervising or giving them feedback as a trainer, and so on. So I think that's it with our presentation here. Again, if you are interested in any of these courses, the best way of finding out more and learning about the requirements and which one is most suited to your needs is really to apply for the course or get information from the center. Again, every center will offer different possibilities, and it's really important that in the interview process, you ask questions and find out as much as you need to know basically to make a decision about the best format for you. So here's the phone number for São Paulo. By the way, this is São Paulo, so I don't think we have the area code there, but it's 11 if you are in
Ooh,
São Paulo, Brazil.
that is
But again,
true.
I recommend getting in touch through that email address there. We have just a
We
few minutes.
we can also email you costs and dates through the email. So do email the faculdade, please. Thank you so much.
And you have my email address there as well. So again, wilson.portillo@culturainglesa.com.br and Glauco here, glauco.souza@myclass.com.br. If you have any questions, if you want to get in touch with us, feel free. But also feel free to get in touch with Faculdade Cultura Inglesa for any of these courses.
We hope it's been useful. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
It was
See
such a
you all.
pleasure.
Bye bye.
Thank you all for stopping by.